of introducing our special guest presenter. My name is Jessie. I am the Assistant Director here at the Library and the Chair of the Nederland Area Historical Society. Thank you for coming to the library today. We're super excited to have our special guest. Silvia said she wanted to be introduced by saying that she just hangs around up here and goes exploring and hiking. But we all know she is a local area author who has written so many amazing books that you can check them out from the library. I recommend buying them because you'll want to reread them, even though I do want you to check them out. Check them out first, then buy them. And then she's also a renowned area historian. So we are super excited today to just listen to some of the stories she's going to tell us about the past, the present, and the future of Caribou Cemetery. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm overwhelmed at the turnout. I don't know. Well, I'm just surprised that there's this many people interested in Caribou Cemetery, but I'm very happy about that. It's been something that's been on the back of my mind for many years. Like many of you in this room, I knew Tom Hendricks. He talked about wanting to preserve the cemetery back in the 90s. I think he wrote to the State Historical Society, tried to get a grant, and that never went anywhere. And people over the years have been saying, let's do something about the cemetery. You'll see very soon that most of it has been very badly vandalized. So maybe it was just sort of too much of a project for one person to take on. But it was a little more than a year ago, my friend Julie called me. She's over here in the front row. And she said, we got to do something about the Caribou Cemetery. So she got me motivated, and I will kind of explain what we did to get going, but I'm going to spend most of the time showing you how we identified some of the gravestones through historical photographs, but I have to get a little further along to get to that point. So this is what the cemetery looked like in 2019, which is hard to believe because for many, many years, I know I went up there 20-some years ago. My friend Dina went up there 20-some years ago. Others of you have been up there. And there was a big open area. You could look off and see the mountains. And it finally got so overgrown it looked like this in 2019. And then sometime between when I took this picture and when Tom Hendricks died in January 2020, the Grand Island Mining Company cut down a lot of the trees. It's on their property, and a lot of people don't realize it. They think it's all Forest Service, but it's not. It's private property. But they cut down a lot of trees, and that was great because it opened it up, and we got it back to the feel of the way it was in some of these historic photos. So it looked like that in 2019. It looked like this in October, this past fall. All of that wooded area has been cleared out. The road that was on the side is still there, and we put up this gate and arched gateway and had that fabricated just for us. We had a donation of this iron fence, installed like a smooth wire fence all the way around the perimeter. There had been at least 2 fences before that we know of. The previous one was in 1953, and it was a barbed wire fence, but most of that had collapsed. And then way back, like in 1920 or so, there was a fence, but we now have it completely fenced in again, and it looks like a cemetery. This is the photo that I have on postcards. I have a pile there by the projector and another pile back there. Please help yourself. Take one, take 2. I have more in the car. Send them to your friends. Just use them as a postcard. We just want to kind of raise awareness about what we're doing, and it's just, I took the picture, but I can't take credit for how great it looks. We're really proud of that. So another thing I want to mention right away is the wonderful support we had. Julie and I kind of got the ball rolling, but what we did initially is I set up a website, did some publicity, I wrote some newspaper articles, we got some donations. But it was this work crew that really, I mean, it's you people here in Nederland. You just came together. Emmett was a big star of that with his wood chipper all day chipping branches, but we got all those trees that had been cut down cleared up, and I couldn't do the heavy lifting, so what I was looking forward to doing was what I've been spending the past winter on, and what I'm going to be talking about mostly was looking at old photographs and trying to figure out who was where. But we couldn't do that till we had all this debris out of the way. So we had this work crew come up in August, and I want to thank, I know some of you that are in this room were there, and it was really fantastic. I can't even read the screen from over here. But after we got the debris up, then we started the mapping. And Sean is here, he's in the green hat. You can talk to him afterwards if you have questions. He has graduated, but he was a college student at the time at CU. And he was working with Dr. Lauren Hosick, anthropology professor at CU. And they've been working on the Nederland Cemetery as well. But we had a kind of a little core group with Sean, Ellen, her sister Annie, and Bill, and kind of different people, different days. But we spent 4 or 5 days just going around the cemetery, and I'm going to take you on a little walking tour of that in a minute. But there were 2 known burials before we started, and we identified what we believe, but we can't positively prove some of them, but 14 more. And so I think we're on our way, hopefully we're on our way to getting them all. So quick thanks to the Nederland Area Historical Society, the Grand Island Mining Company, all of you people, the library. And I forgot to mention with the Historical Society, we set up a place where people could make nonprofit donations through the Historical Society that come to the cemetery. So without that, we would never have raised the donations that we had to do the fence and other projects. I mean, it just sort of everything came together. So to go to historic photographs, this was one taken probably right after 1953, because you can see the fence. And the fence had just been put up, so there were a number of photos from that era. And in looking at old photographs, these are some of the things that we were looking for. Whoops, sorry. Shapes, names, inscriptions, size, shape, markings, the location, where they were in relation to each other, and also the background. So this is what we were glad that with all that clearing of debris, we got it to get back to some semblance of this. But all of these stones are gone. The only reference point is right around this beautiful cross here, and that's the grave of Margaret Perkins. So where to begin? We had no burial records, no plat map, and no stones in place. All we had were these lists, and they both came from Carnegie Library in Boulder, and they're both exactly the same, except the second one, they're in different order, so it's confusing. The second one has a burial from 1972. But this is what we had to start with, and then we had some historic photos, and we were just begging everybody, the Carnegie Library, the Historical Society, and individuals, just anybody that had photos, to come forward. And then we started trying to match up, okay, who's who and what's where, and where do they go? So Sean, you're the star in this show, so we'll start with you. So Sean, this was a project that he did on an independent study, right?
Yeah.
And he did GPS readings and photos, and he made lots of notes about the size and the shape of the bases. I mentioned that the stones themselves are gone. Is there anybody who has never been to Caribou Cemetery? Okay, I'll try to explain that. Almost half of you. These bases of the stones are there, but the bases are all different. And they all have their distinctive features. They're different sizes and shapes. And so Sean was making notes of all those. And he posted his findings online. It's what's it called? A storyline. But it's too complicated web address. If you want to look up his work, find him afterwards, or find me, or email me. I have my business cards as well as postcards in the back. Email me and I'll email you the link to his website, because it's not an easy one just to post. So most of these photos did come from the Nederland Area Historical Society, Carnegie, and individuals. So I'm going to take you on a walking tour, and we're going to start at the gate down here, and I'm going to go through this section first, what I just call the open area, and then the western area, and then the wooded area. And if I was more professional at drawing maps, that would be a more professional map. I'll have to do. So this is what it looked like after the big cleanup. I mean, there still were a lot of branches and shrubbery, but I think it's just beautiful. I mean, it's so much different than it was when it was overgrown, and so much different than it was when the trees were cut and just lying there. But anyway, this is the fence. I just dropped my clicker here. Give me a minute. It doesn't work without right there is the fence that goes by Margaret. Well, now it's not working at all. Right here. That's the only reference point that we had. That was where that beautiful cross grave was. And so we had to base everything on that, but this is what it looked like after the cleanup area. And this is a close-up of that grave. And again, I'm just amazed. I don't know where the people had these gravestones made. Rick, if you know, let me know sometime. But I know there were monument companies, that's what they're called, that made gravestones in Boulder. There probably were some in Central City. I have no idea if there were any in Nederland or not, but I mean, these were poor miners. A lot of them came as immigrants from Cornwall. Where they had the money to pay for these, I have no idea. But I think they're all completely different from each other and very distinctive. Sorry about that. Oops. That's Ellen. She's over here somewhere. She actually got inside the fence and cleaned off some debris and found the actual base that went with this stone. But there's no doubt from the photos that that's the stone. So then we could start figuring out with Sean's GPS, okay, this one is this way, this one's that way. And on the map, we could figure out from the photos kind of what was where. Plus some more things that I'll get into here. Am I in your way?
No, I was thinking I want to step back. You said you couldn't.
Oh. Well, I know what I'm talking about. This is the first grave as you come in from the gate. This is for Thomas Cosgrove, and it says, "Our darling Tommy," which immediately, you have to realize these are people, and the people are still there. Their remains are still there. We're not just talking about some abstract building or something. These are people, and they're there. And this one is the first one where you come in from the gate, and you can see that this base here, it's you'll see when you see some more of them. It's different. It's higher. It's got kind of knobby edge to it, but from looking at an old photo showing the entrance, it was obvious that that's where that one belonged. So we identified Thomas Cosgrove. Just to sort of recap real quick, is that you, Alan?
No.
No? Somebody's trimming, okay. There's Margaret Perkins there, and this is the Cosgrove right there. So as you walk in, those are the two right away that you can identify. Then this is a photo from Carnegie Library. Sarah works at Carnegie. She's back there. She kindly supplied me with historic photos at a high resolution so that I could kind of zoom in. Well, not kind of, I did. I zoomed in and could see more of what was there. But this is the picture that I used the most, and it was the most helpful. But you can see Margaret here, And then there's something here, and a lot of these were fenced in, some iron and some wood. This is fenced in with some vertical slats, and then there's a fence behind it with horizontal railings, and then there's this one over here. So I zoomed in on first on the left side, then the middle, and then the right. But here's the zooming in on the left, and you can see there's something here. Okay, that has that kind of draping. It's called drapery in cemetery symbolism. And it was really obvious. It was this stone. This is Albert Lunsford. Drapery signifies sorrow and mourning, and I guess they used it often in the, we're talking 1878 here, but it's the only one that we have seen in a photo that had that drapery shape. So then it was pretty obvious. This was a photo. We took a lot of recent ones, but this is one I took in 2002, and it just shows the base and another base on top of it. And then looking at the middle portion of this, you could look back and see this stone. And this is the one I wish some photographer had not cut the top off, because we can't say for sure. We can't read that, John, unless you can sometime.
No.
But I've not been able to read this one, and I don't know if the top is shaped like this. But this is one of the very earliest ones. This is the early part of the cemetery, and everything else seems to match up. When I say we, it was sort of a joint thing. Sean and I and Ellen and Annie, we kind of, and Julie, we emailed each other and said, well, what do you think about this and that? We kind of got to a consensus about some of these. And this is on the right side. Of course, this is really easy, because this is all by itself, and here it is in another photo. It's Sarah Collins. She also died in 1875. And we have on the front, we have founded 1875. We don't really know if that's the very first burial, but it's the first that we know of. So I hope we don't find one earlier, Julie. We'll have to do another gate.
To modify the sign.
So here's remember I said there was a wooden fence in the background that had horizontal railings. That's this one here. And this is obviously Sarah Collins, because you can see that there were two very large bases, one on top of each other, and this is the one off by itself. And we don't really know what caused all the, I say vandalism, but I think the vandalism probably came later. A lot of these just plain fell down, they broke. But I don't think the dog and the child helped in this case. But anyway, that one we think is this. I mean, here is something in here. It's kind of falling over, but we think it's this one.
Ooh.
We think it's William Hicks. It has that same rounded top and the circular design. Several of the stones had circular designs. No two of them were exactly the same, but this is one. There are two of them that have a hand pointing up. That's in cemetery symbolism. It's a hand pointing up toward God, and it's supposed to symbolize that the person is going up to heaven. I guess I don't know. If anybody has a better explanation, let me know. But
It's letting you know where they're going.
I hope so. And this is the base, and this is completely unrelated. It took a while for us to figure this out, but what Ellen's pointing at here is somebody, I don't know, maybe in the 50s or something, went in and put some cement. But you can kind of look at the cement, you can look at the base itself. As I said before, the bases are all different. This has some little, it's gray with lines in it. We could 99.9% say that it's Hicks. This is what it looked like last fall. This is the base for Sarah Collins, the one that had two big bases, and then back in here is where the Hicks gravestone is, and you can see there's a brick there. A lot of these early you'll see in some other pictures, underneath the fences that went around the graves, there were bricks on the ground. Now this one was a real mystery for a while. Outside of the boundary, we found part of an original stone, and this is for Agnes Julia Ewart. And again, it was not in the formally enclosed area. So there were two theories, and my theory was we found parts of a fence, a wooden fence out there. I thought for some odd reason that I couldn't explain, she was buried outside of the boundary. I mean, why else? But another theory was that maybe somebody vandalizing, and the vandalism seemed to have come more in the 70s. Somebody vandalizing the property picked up the stone and for whatever reason tossed it. But then why would they toss the fence too? We haven't quite figured that out, but at first we had no idea where this belonged. Agnes was the daughter of the Reverend Ewart, who was a Methodist preacher, and a lot of the Cornish people were Methodists. This family happened to come from Germany, but he would go from city or town to town. He was in Caribou this year. The next year, I know because of looking at census records, the next child was born in Silver Plume, so I know that he moved on to Silver Plume the next year. But what did I write on here? Anyway, I have an inscription there from the mother's obituary of a life full of sacrifice with high ideals in heart and soul, a true mother. Agnes was the second of 7 children for this family. So here is Sean again, and you can see I cut his head off. I wasn't really interested, Sean, in your head. I was more interested in the GPS. But here's part of the fence that was there. It has square nails in it. I mean, we know this is an old fence. It's not anything anybody put up in the last 100 years. But Sean diligently went from site to site. What did we do? 40, 50 other? I mean, a lot of them.
40,
Yeah. Did GPS readings on every one. But sorry, I didn't get your head. This is Ellen and Dr. Lauren Boat. Trying to think of Jose. Jose. I'm sorry. Anyway, you weren't with us that time, Sean, but we all went up and they dug around, tried to see if there was anything under this stone, any remains or a casket or anything, and did not find anything. So again, at this point, it was still a mystery. So we're going to go on over to the western boundary here, and Tom Hendricks' grave. How many of you knew Tom Hendricks? Perhaps almost everybody. He was a great guy, and at first, Emmett over here, you did this with drill steel, the cross, which is really beautiful. For the first couple years, that's all there was to mark Tom's grave. Last summer, at his widow's request, we brought in this is a drilling rock that Tom had on his property, and then some of our donations went to buy this green rock, and it's my understanding and hope that we put a plaque on it this summer with Tom's name and dates. So I thought it might be fun to look at a few pictures of Tom, maybe some you haven't seen. These were all taken in 2004, but that's Tom in the Cross Mine, which he worked for many, many years. This was in 1989, that's me, Tom and me. And then this was, whenever Tom had a group of people that came on a mine tour, he would give a demonstration of how long it took before a fuse would go off. Anybody attend one of those? Yep. I'm thinking that, well, he's got a lighted fuse in this hand. I think the boot was just to throw. Is that right, Julie? Do you know?
I don't know.
Well, it's my understanding that I was there for several of these. He would throw the boot, And then the crowd would stand there and he'd say, well, see, it takes like 20 seconds before the fuse goes off or whatever. I was there
Sometimes
one
it's something
day where
else in
there
the
was a
booth, too.
guy in a really fancy red little sports car parked right under like a power line, and Tom threw this and it landed on top of the power line. And the guy just jumped in his car and he immediately drove away. I don't know if it was this day or not, but that's Dwayne Smith. Probably many of you are familiar with his book Silver Saga. He actually wrote it as a thesis when he went to see you many years ago. He was at this conference that we had in 2004, and he lives in Durango. He's apparently not doing very well. He has some memory problems, but I know people who keep in touch with him. I was just going through my photos recently, and it was fun to see that picture of Tom and Dwayne. So we're back in the cemetery again. Here's Sean photographing another stone that is right at the fence, right behind Tom, right at the very western boundary. It's by a tree that's kind of curved, and so he was doing his photography and his GPS, and I had a postcard. This is also the Historical Society in Carnegie had the same postcard, but we found this postcard that showed the actual stone, and then Sean gets all the credit for this. He zoomed in, and there on the left, you can barely read it, but it says Agnes. This is a stone that we found in the woods. And then this is a photo that someone else sent me more recently that actually shows the stone with the writing on the base, with the grave, same curved tree in the back. Just amazing. That was just spectacular. I mean, we were all thrilled. And, you know, I've got a whole room full of people here. I don't know if all of you are just thrilled as we are, but we were. It was pretty exciting.
It's amazing to me to see how little the trees grow in 80 years.
Yeah.
It shows
But it's still current.
the harsh environment.
And here is Ellen and Annie sitting on the little bench there by Tom's grave, and this is Agnes's over here by the curved tree and the bench. And this is really the only part of the cemetery where you really can look back at all Baldy in the background. In those earlier pictures, you could see the mountains like right away at the beginning. But there's still more trees, but they're outside of the boundary. We didn't worry about them. We had enough to do to get the ones out that we did. So now we're going into the western boundary, or the woods, I mean, going into the woods. This is the only stone that was marked at all when we started. This is for a woman named Ada Songer Landon. Anybody know this woman? She apparently spent summers up here. I don't know anything more about her. This is a photo I got of her from Find a Grave that Dina started years ago. So I assume the family must have. How did she get on Find a Grave? Did you put her on there?
I probably did because I took those photos and I said, well, I might as well get them all together
Yeah.
on that one site.
Well,
But I'm assuming
thank you for
some
doing that. But
some.
somebody posted a photo of her on that Find a Grave website. But this is the only one that's marked, and it's flat, and it has a flat marker. That means plaque on it. This is another photo that came in multiple places. I happen to have a postcard of it. Carnegie also has it. Historical Society also has it. This is just a little bit past that previous one, but this is the first time that I could see something legible. It says Emma George, and then this one was a mystery for a while until we zoomed in on it, and then this one we had already figured out because it's an obelisk, and it was the only one shaped like that in the whole cemetery. So we'll get to that in a minute. But these three graves are all together there in the woods. This is the one for Mary Webster, and She was also born in Cornwall. Also has a finger pointing up toward God. One of these is like from the palm in, and one of them is the palm out. But they're different. But I mean, on different stones. There's two with fingers pointing up to God. There was no evidence of wood anymore, and I don't remember seeing that stone. Could be, but I don't remember it. But the grave, what's left of the gravestone is this jagged base. And so, looking at the base and the bottom, and this is from an old photo, but this has the epitaph that's actually very common. Remember, friends, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me. This was something that came out, I think, in medieval England, or a little bit later maybe in England, but it's on a lot of gravestones in England. It's on a lot of gravestones in this country as well. And again, it reminds you that, you know, these are people here. We're not just looking at a garage or something. This is the other stone that said Emma George, a little bit harder to see. But the obelisk, this really intrigued me, and it was, I had gone through enough of these old photos. When Sean and I were there at that one doing GPS, I immediately said, oh, I know who this is. This is the Richards family, because it was the only one that was shaped like that. And you can see that black area is this black area. This part there is this part here. This was a family that lost three children within 1 week during the diphtheria epidemic. And it's just amazing. So I started doing the family tree. Yeah. This is the maiden name of the mother. There's another sibling buried right here with no stone in Columbia Cemetery. She had 15 children, this woman. 13 with her first husband, 2 more with her second husband. But the 3 are in Caribou, 1 in Boulder, 1 in Central City, first husband in Central City. And when she died, 8 of her children had predeceased her. I mean, it's just amazing to think of these people and what they went through and what they lived through. So looking at this part of the woods, this is what it looks like now. The little obelisk for the Richards is up here. Mary Webster's over there. The woman that loved this place is over here. Emma George, there's nothing, maybe we call that a suspect grave. There were a lot of graves that it was a pile of stones and we just figured it. But this is what it looks like now. So, you know, it takes a bit of detective work to figure this out. But meanwhile, while we were doing all that, remind me, Julie, what is this Jim's last name?
Jim Heron.
Heron, that's right. He was with State Historical for many years?
He was with DRMS. He's a project manager for the Abandoned Mine program, and then he transitioned to doing all the historical research.
Oh, that's right.
After he retired and came back and did the historical. Yeah.
These were some of our volunteers when we were putting up the fence. So while some of us were off trying to figure out the graves, others were putting up the fence. And I mean, it was just a wonderful feeling of the community coming together. This is a stone for JAS, is usually James, but it could be Jason. But I don't know why they didn't just write out James, if that's what it is. But anyway, this man died at the age of 30. A lot of the men I know from some newspaper articles, and I'm still doing a lot more of this historical research, trying to find obituaries, trying to find descendants, trying to learn more about these people. But the children died in diphtheria and what else? Diphtheria and
Scarlet fever.
Scarlet fever, yes, the epidemics. The women possibly in childbirth or just from whatever. And a lot of the men died in mining accidents. I think he died in a mining accident. I'm not positive. I have to check on that. But I think these circular designs are interesting. This one is just some floral design, I believe, but if you noticed on those earlier ones, it's kind of hard to see in the pictures, particularly with the children. In those circular designs, there's a dove or an angel carrying a cherub, or but I think cemetery symbolism is fantastic. What do you want to say?
Lamb.
What?
The lamb.
The lamb, yes, lots of lambs for children, but we don't have a lamb at Caribou. At least we haven't found one yet. So I need a plea. This kind lady here in the front, second row, told me she has some photos. Anybody with old photos, please let me know. I will go to your house tomorrow. Here's again is some more detective work of Sean's. This was on the base of the Williams. I mean, he actually analyzed the base from the stone, the picture of the stone with the recent photos, and drew the little imperfections that were on there. I mean, when I'm saying that there were a couple that we think are likely, I mean, we're 99.9% sure they're likely, because Sean's gone to all this careful work to figure out, you know, some little dent in a base from 50 years ago. Here's Sean and Annie over here. There's still some graves. He's doing another GPS reading, and I did get your head in that. But there are some that are, you know, are possibly graves. There's some that are likely graves, but there's some we just don't know. But we have all those readings now. And then this is Frances Pugh. I think from one article I read, this was the last standing gravestone in the cemetery, and she was 62 years old, and it has a gorgeous fence. I mean, look at this picture. And there was some book that I read that said some of these fences ended up in the front yards of some house in Nederland, maybe. If you see a fence like this, let me know. It needs to go back where it belongs. But again, another picture of this stone. I'm surprised this was the last standing, because it's so tall and thin. You'd think it would have fallen over, but it was in the woods, so maybe it was more protected. But again, there's the current picture. Sorry, of the base.
Did you ever figure out what was the inscription? Or
No, I could never get in. I could never zoom in to read it, but it would be nice to know. So, what are we going to do this year? That's what we did last year. Again, last summer, we got the debris cleared up, got everything out of the way. We got the fence installed. We got the website out. We raised some money. I think we got up to a wonderful start, but I'm saying we because it really was a joint project. It was the community coming together. And some plans for this summer, we want to mark all of the known graves. And this is just an idea. At a trophy shop, I found these markers. They're, I don't know, maybe a foot long with a stand, and you can cut the stand off if you want it to be lower down, and you can have it engraved, and they're $45 or something a piece. I think what we need to do is at least get the ones that we know marked, and I don't want to do anything permanent or terribly expensive, because first of all, they could get vandalized again, and we can't invest a whole lot of money in something that might just disappear the next day. But also the families. I'm trying to get a hold of the families. So if we can get families aware of these burials, they might come forward, and they might want to do their own gravestone or their own marker or put their own inscription or whatever. So this is something we're still trying to figure out. But we're going to put up interpretive signs, one in the town site itself about mining history, and then one up by the cemetery about the cemetery, kind of like that walking tour map. And again, I'm going to say we're looking for, still doing research, trying to find descendants. Oh, we're going to hopefully get in ground penetrating radar and forensic dogs. It's amazing. I know some people with forensic dogs. They can actually go to a historic cemetery like this and find some remains. I mean, even after all this time has passed. So I'm hoping that we do that this summer. And and the big thing, the Agnes stone, the one we found in the woods. Oh, I've dropped this. That is going to be on display in the Gillespie House Museum. So I'm really excited about that, and I want to thank the people in the Historical Society. They own the house, and if you're not familiar with it, it was Dr. Gillespie, who was a physician here around the turn of the century, early 1900s. And it's a nice little house museum with all kinds of things, so I figured Agnes' stone should fit right in. So thank you. And then I have reconsecrate and celebrate. I am not really quite sure how we're going to do this, but since this was a cemetery, there's human remains still there. It was vandalized, it was abused. Somebody, I don't know, if, Julie, if you thought of it, somebody said, let's reconsecrate the cemetery. And I have talked to the Methodist pastor at the church in Boulder. I think a Methodist pastor would be appropriate, seeing as little Agnes, the daughter of the Methodist pastor in Caribou, was the stone that we have. And I just said, would you come up sometime this summer and say a few words? And I guess I kind of leave it up to him as to what he would say. I don't know. But then we also want to have a big party. We want to have a potluck, and whether we tie that around Netherlands having its 150th anniversary this summer, we need to discuss that. But we could tie in our party with your party, and
We can bring the Hendrix boot. So we'll take care of the Hendrix boot.
yes, yeah, we should do another demonstration. So all that has to be figured out. But how to get there? Somebody was asking me, okay, how do you get there? This is a aerial Google map. So it looks flat, but it's not, it's very steep. But there's the parking in the town site. Here's the road coming up from Nederland. These are the stone buildings that you see as you're driving up from Nederland just before you get to the town site of Caribou. Those stone buildings date from the 1920s, from the Potosi Mining Company. One was a boarding house and one was a mine office. And that's really the only there really aren't any old remains from the historic era, because that was the 20s and most of the mining was done in the 1870s and 1880s. The historic mining, the one where most of these burials came from. But there is a gated road here, and that is just to keep people from camping. There were actually people who camped in the cemetery. I mean, I can't think of a worst thing to do to a cemetery, a vandalized cemetery with human remains, than just pitch your tent and camp on it. So to keep out those people. This is now gated, and again, this is private property, but we have the Grand Island Mining Company's permission to walk. So it's pedestrian access. You park in the town site. It's about 10 minutes, 15 if you're slow like I am. And then this is just my last slide here. Why is this important? I found this on a sign on a cemetery. I was just looking online. I think it's in Kansas or someplace. The cemetery is a history of people, a perpetual record of yesterday, and a sanctuary of peace and quiet today. As etched on Merriwebster stone, remember, friends, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. Well, I added that. So this is in memory of all these people and the others waiting to be identified. Questions? Again, I'm just thrilled there's so many